coming up. In World War II, there are plenty of incredible pilots who have made great contributions to their nations by outstanding feats of bravery, sacrifice, and skill. But in June of 1942, in the heart of the Pacific Ocean, there would be one pilot who may have made the greatest single contribution in the history of military aviation. In this video, we will take a look at Richard Halsey Best, the dauntless dive bomber pilot who would play a major role in the destruction of not one, but two aircraft carriers in a single day of combat, and then, immediately after, the tragic circumstances that would end his flying career forever. Hey guys, TJ here. As I'm sure many of you have seen lately, we are currently in uncertain times. And in uncertain times, it is always a good idea to own some gold. But I have a question for you. Do you know how much your gold jewelry is actually worth? Chances are you don't. Fortunately for you, there is a company called Midway, and they will totally change the way you think about jewelry. They design and craft 24-karat bullion-grade gold jewelry that is sold by gram weight with a transparent design fee that they publish. The price of each piece is broken down into two parts on their website for you to see. The first part covers the value of the gold in each piece, and the second part is the Midway fee, which covers their design and manufacturing costs. Because each piece is made of solid gold, it is essentially a gold investment that you can wear, hence the term investment jewelry. You can actually see the price of each piece change in real time based on the live gold price and track the value of your jewelry just like a stock in your Midway account. And since 2018, Midway customers have actually earned a 14% average return on their jewelry. It's a cool modern take on traditional 24-karat gold ownership where your jewelry also becomes part of your investment portfolio. So if you want to be smart and diversify your investments and support TJ3 History at the same time, use the link in the description below to get 5% off your first purchase at Midway.com, where they have a beautiful selection of chains, pendants, rings, and so much more. Thanks again to Midway, and without further ado, enjoy. Richard Halsey Best was born in New Jersey in March of 1910. He graduated from the Naval Academy with honors in 1932 and served for 2 years on the light cruiser USS Richmond. For the next few years, he served the U.S. Navy in a few different roles, flying multiple aircraft and building up his experience and skills as a pilot. Given the state of internal affairs thereafter, Best could sense that war was likely on the horizon and decided that he would provide his best service to the country as a dive bomber pilot. After his request was approved, he was effectively transferred back to the Pacific Fleet. On May 31st of 1940, Best was ordered to join a squadron on the USS Enterprise aircraft carrier. Upon his arrival, he was named a flight officer and would eventually be moved up to a squadron commander. While aboard the Enterprise on December 7th of 1941, Best was waiting for the ship to return to port when he discovered that members of his squad had flown into the Japanese attack as it came upon Pearl Harbor. Hours later in the evening, Best flew his aircraft in the first Enterprise strike of the United States entry into the war using one of the 6 SBDs that carried smoke generators. His squadron was responsible for providing cover for the torpedo bombers on the chance that they found the Japanese ships. However, they were not able to locate the fleet, and Best's group returned to the Enterprise without seeing action. 6 months later, after seeing some brief action in other parts of the Pacific, Best would find himself with the rest of the U.S. fleet headed towards Midway Island, where they were supposed to intercept the Japanese naval forces there. Little did he know that not only would he find himself in a major battle in the coming days, but his role in this famous clash would be one that was absolutely crucial to the Americans turning the tide of the war. On June 4th of 1942, as the Americans waited for the Japanese to arrive, multiple flights were sent out to try and locate the prized carriers of the rising sun. Eventually, a PBY Catalina patrol aircraft reported contact with enemy forces, and shortly after, the Enterprise launched an air attack in response at 7:06 in the morning. TBD Devastator torpedo bombers, F-4F Wildcat fighters, and the SBD Dauntless dive bombers all launched into the sky only to become separated along the way, all except for the dive bombers that remained clustered together. At approximately 9:55 a.m., Already at risk of running out of fuel on their way back, the dive bombers finally reached the Japanese fleet, right under 3 hours after the initial attack was launched. After choosing their targets, the dive bombers began to launch their assault on the nearest 2 aircraft carriers, the Kaga and the Akagi. Because American tactics at this point in the war were still being perfected, and because most pilots had only seen little or no action at all, the attack grew to become a chaotic and confusing mess, with the SBDs moving in to attack the Kaga. Richard Best was under the impression that his group was to attack in the typical manner of U.S. dive bombers, with the trailing squadron attacking the closest target and the leading squadron taking the target that was further away. In this case, the Kaga was closer and the Akagi was further down. However, one of the pilots was initially trained as a fighter pilot and was not aware of this standard, so he brought the leading squadron to attack the Kaga. When Best saw the leading squadron diving down past him, he realized what was happening and changed his plans to attack the forward Akagi. But most of the trailing squadron didn't see the signal to change course and continued their descent on the Kaga. By this point, there were only 3 planes left to attack the Akagi, including Richard Best's. The 3 SBDs in Best's formation began their attack at 10:26 a.m. Lieutenant Edwin John Kroger dropped the first bomb, which hit the water on the other side of the carrier's bridge. Best followed immediately after, and under an intense barrage of flak and machine gun fire from the Japanese ships, and in a nearly vertical dive, he honed in on the red circle of the ship and released his bomb, piercing the flight deck and sending the upper hangar into a fiery burst of flames. The third and final bomb was dropped by Ensign Frederick Thomas Weber, which burst apart in the water near the stern, blocking the Akagi's rudder. Despite Best's bomb being the only one to actually make contact with the ship, the explosions that followed from the fuel tanks catching fire effectively marked the Akagi as good as out of commission. And just like that, in the span of less than an hour, Richard Best had struck the first key blow to the Japanese fleet in the Second World War. But this would not be the end of his showing in the Battle of Midway, as fate would give him another opportunity yet again to deal damage to their opponents in the Pacific. Later that same day, Best would be sent out again on a mission to strike the Hiryu, the last of the Japanese aircraft carriers remaining in the Battle of Midway. As this attack commenced, Best once again made it through the Japanese defenses, who were no doubt weakened from the earlier strikes. Though it is not for certain, Best was more than likely responsible for one of the 4 hits that ultimately sank the Hiryu. James Francis Murray, Best's gunner at the time, claimed afterwards that he saw the flash of the bomb through the smoke as it struck the ship when they were flying away. The carrier would thereafter sink, essentially ending the most significant naval battle in history, with the Japanese losing all 4 of their carriers, while the Americans would lose only 1. When the battle concluded, Best was awarded the Navy Cross and the Distinguished Flying Cross for his success in defying extreme danger from powerful fighter opposition, as he led his squadron's assault and dive bombing against Japanese carriers. The citation for his award went on to cite that by flying at the distance he did, he rendered his return unlikely because of probable fuel exhaustion. But he relentlessly pushed on with his attacks in a gallant effort. With this performance, Best may have very likely been the first and only pilot in history to successfully bomb 2 aircraft carriers in one day. However, the battle was not all victories for Best. As soon as he landed on the Enterprise after his bombing runs, he coughed up blood and continued to do so for the next 24 hours. He grew sicker throughout the day, eventually catching a fever and was admitted to Pearl Harbor Hospital. As he was examined, the flight surgeon began to suspect that Best may have inhaled caustic gases during his flight. This was due to his plane's oxygen rebreather heating up and subsequently releasing poisonous fumes through his oxygen mask. To make matters worse, Best had contracted tuberculosis sometime beforehand, and the caustic fumes worked in conjunction to make his situation even worse. He was immediately transferred from the Pearl Harbor Hospital to Fitzsimmons General Hospital in Colorado for treatment. He was thereafter effectively retired from the Navy in 1944 and granted full disability, but would never be able to fly again after this famous day. After Best retired, he moved to Santa Monica, California, where he worked in a research division for the Douglas Aircraft Corporation. To this day, he is remembered for his bravery and incredible accomplishments as a dive bomber pilot on June 4th of 1942. He would pass away in 2001 at the age of 91. Thank you guys so much for watching this historical recreation. If you want to support my content, please check out my fan store here and make sure to click subscribe right here. And if you want to go above and beyond, feel free to support me on Patreon, which can be found in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.